Hello and welcome to our third sew along. Today we are going to make the log cabin table runner. So for this you need 4 light fabrics, a centre fabric and 4 dark fabrics. When you've got them, these are long quarters, so you can play around with how you'd like to order them. And when you're happy with your order, you need to cut them into 1.5 inch strips. And what I've done is I've cut one strip off each fabric at the moment, and then as I need more I'll cut them as we go along. So we'll go and sew our log cabin blocks. These are our log cabin strips already, and from your 1 3/4 inch strip from your centre fabric you need to cut 10 squares ready for the log cabin. There are various ways of doing log cabin blocks, but this is my favourite way of doing it. I've taken my first light strip and I've put it right side up under my needle. And what we're going to do is take a centre square, place it right side down, and then sew a 1/4 inch seam. And then stop when you've just gone over your square. Take the next square and add it on, right sides together, and again 1/4 inch seam. And you keep going until you've added all of the squares on to your first strip on the light side. So as you can see now, I've joined all of my squares on. Looks a bit of an odd sort of bunting. And now what we're going to do is cut these apart. So you're going to take a little ruler and you're going to line up your stitching line with a line on your ruler on the edge of one of your squares. This keeps everything square, and you're just going to cut off that first bit of light and then move to the next square and do exactly the same. And then keep going, making sure you keep lining up your fabric, your stitch line with the lines on the ruler. Just take your time doing this, because it's important to keep your fabric square. And now what you're going to do is turn them all around and repeat. So this is the cut side, this still needs cutting. So we're just going to turn them around and do exactly the same thing, keeping everything nice and square. And so that is your first unit, like so. So I'm just going to cut the rest of these. So now what we're going to do is we're going to press the blocks. It's really important to press as you go, because this will help to keep the blocks square. So put them down on the ironing board with the light log on the top, and you're just going to set the seam by pressing it and then open it up and just press the seam away, and continue to do that until you've done all 10 units, and they will look like this. So these are all the units, all nicely pressed and ready for the second round. This method of log cabin is we're actually making all of the blocks all at once. So instead of making one block and then go on to the second, we're sewing them all together. So by the time we finish sewing, we'll have 10 blocks done, ready to put together. So with the second round, you put the same fabric down, right side up, under your machine. And the most important thing to remember is when you sew the next log on, you keep the most recent addition at the top. So my first addition was the light, so I'm going to put that right sides down, and that's at the top, ready to be added. So again, 1/4 inch seam, and just sew on each of the units. You'll get to the end of the strip and then you'll probably have to start another strip. So this is the reason why. Don't cut all of your fabric up to begin with, just cut what you need. And again, just come off your unit and add the next one fairly close to it, and continue . So when you've added all of your units on, you would go back to your rotary cutting, cut them all apart just as we did before. So starting with the right hand side, again lining up your stitch line and fabric edges with your ruler to keep everything square. So now back to the iron, and again put the unit with the latest one you've added. So this is the one I've just added on, face up, quick press, and then gently push over, and that is your first round of lights added to your centre square. So now we're going to take our first dark logs to add on in exactly the same way. So you're going to take your strip, right side up under your needle, and then with the latest log you've added on, which is this one here, you're going to put that at the top as you add it right sides down onto your strip. So that's the first round of lights. Do exactly the same. Take it to your cutting board. Cut each block apart. And then again, press them all, so the latest log added, press and press up. So there you go, you can see we're gradually working around the centre square. So the last side now of the first round to go on. So again, the first dark under the machine, right side up, and we're going to take the latest addition at the top, face down, and sew away. So again, cut away. And then press. So that is our complete round one on our centre square. By pressing the way we do, it makes the blocks sit nice and flat. All the seams are going outwards and it just keeps everything nice and flat and square. So now you continue. So you're going to go back to your second light and sew again 2 lights, and then you'll turn it around and do your 2 darks. And you continue on until you've added all of your rounds on to complete your log cabin block. So here we have our block with our 2 rounds of light, 2 rounds of dark on there. You're going to continue adding your 3rd light and 3rd dark, and then your 4th light and 4th dark, and just keep going round, pressing every time, trimming, keeping it nice and square. And obviously the bigger your block gets, the more fabric you're going to need. So just cut your 1.5 inch strips as you go along. So keep sewing. Your blocks are all completed now, so you're going to lay them out in this formation following the diagram in our pattern. And so we've got 4 rows here, so you need to take the blocks together, right sides together, and sew with 1/4 inch down the seam. These make your rows. And then, so make your 4 rows and then press your seams, and then you can sew all the rows together. So we're going to make the backing now for your table runner. You need to cut from your fabric 2 rectangles, 18.5 by 29 inches. And then we're going to offset them, join them together, but we're going to offset them. And you need to do this by 9 inches. So this gap here is 9. And this is 9. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew them 5 inches from each end and leave a gap for turning in the middle. Anyone who knows me knows I hate slip stitching edges. I'm not very good at it. They always come out wonky. So this is an alternative method where you leave a turning hole in the back, turn it all the way through, and then you can just slip stitch that opening. And you've got a nice clean edge around your table runner. So we're just going to take that to the sewing machine and sew those 2 seams. So this is the backing now. I've marked a pin where I start and where I finish, and then I've put 2 pins in. That's where I'm going to leave the gap for turning. So I'm going to sew 1/4 inch down to the pin and then sew this remaining seam here. When I get to my stopping point, I'm just going to do a few reverse stitches so that when I turn it inside out, it doesn't come undone. And then going to press it, and this will help when you come to slip stitch it on the backing, because you'll have a nice crease. So I'm just going to flip it open. And that now gives me a nice pressed edge so that when we come to slip stitch it, it'll keep it nice and neat. So now we're going to sandwich it all together. You need to lay your quilt top down on the wadding. I've given it a quick spray with 505 spray, which I quite like. It's temporary, so as soon as the item is washed, it's all gone, but it just holds everything in place. So I've given a light spray, press this on top, and now I'm going to cut round in line with my fabric, right on the edge. So that is the table runner top onto the wadding. need to take your backing, put it right side up, and just make sure that where we've pressed it sits nice and flat. Got to lay your topper down, right side down. There's a little leeway all the way round. And then you just need to pin it just to secure it onto the backing. And then we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch all the way round. Once you've sewn all the way round your table runner, you need to cut off the excess backing, just level with your wadding. You can do this with a rotary cutter, either way. And then you need to just clip your corners off. Don't obviously go through your stitching, but just clip them off. And that just reduces the bulk when we turn it inside out. Welcome. So just keep going round. And then, most importantly, you need to clip into the V. So you're just going to take your scissors and clip right down to your sewing line without going through the stitches, and then just one either side, and it just reduces the bulk and makes the table runner lie flat. If you find you turn it inside out and it's still a bit bumpy, you can turn it back and just take a few more snips away. So we turned the table runner right side out through the hole in the backing, and you need to just poke out your corners so that they are nice and sharp. Once you're happy that everything's flat, sitting flat, you need to just give it a really good press, making sure that you roll out the seams so that they are not too bulky. Once you've pressed it, you need to slip stitch the hole in the back. You need to do that before you quilt, because otherwise it might get caught up in your quilting. So just give that, you've got a nice edge to slip stitch. So that's the next job. When it comes to the quilting, you can do free machine quilting on it. You can just sew straight lines, or you can outline the say the centre block and just stitch in the ditch around the logs. You could stitch straight lines through and go around. And what you must do though is leave thread so that you can sew it in, because obviously it's a finished item now, so leave your threads long enough that you can then sew in once you've finished quilting. The table runner's all been quilted now, and we're going to top stitch 1/4 of an inch around the edge, I'm actually using my zipper foot because I find it's easier. It sits on top of the quilt and it's just easier to see where I'm stitching. So I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and that will act like a false binding. So this is the completed table runner. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to make it longer, you just need to add in extra rows of these 3 blocks and just add them on before you finish off with the 2 on the end, so you can make it as long to fit your table. We've got kits and the pattern available on our website. We've got various colour choices, including a Christmas one, so you can get ready with those festive makes. But thank you for joining us again, and we'll see you next time.